Hey, Dane.
Hey,
Thank
Jacob.
you for being a little bit earlier. Appreciate that.
Yeah, sure. No problem. Am I
Awesome.
live?
What you are live? Yes. Welcome to the
Oh,
stage.
okay, cool. Awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll
Sweet.
get out of the way for you just in a second. But yeah, excited to hear kind of about building great user experience and everything from you. This is our last talk of the whole set. So we've seen Zora 101, 102, 103, Zora API, and obviously it's one thing to build everything, but then it's another thing to make it usable and make it for humans. So I'm excited to hear about where to go from there. So I'll get out of the way here. I'll stop sharing my screen. I'll let you take over. But yeah, thanks
Awesome.
again for doing this, Dane.
Sweet. Hello. I think I'm live here. My name's Dain, and I am a product engineer at Zora. So I guess what does that mean in the larger scheme of things? I'm doing this presentation today called "How to Build Engaging or Fun or whatever you want to call it user experiences." And at Zora, in my time there, we've crafted an amazing stack of technology to build really whatever you can imagine on top of it. And I've been fortunate to build a lot of interesting projects over the last year. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about those first and sort of the context that I've been working in as a product engineer. Yeah, I come from a design and development background. So I've been sort of building websites, if you will, for quite a long time. And one thing that really excites me about the medium is that you're building things on a computer for this network. And yeah, I think like having a heavy influence with design has kind of helped guide me towards what I think is interesting to build as a front end. So I just want to sort of step through some different projects. First off, I embarked on this sort of fun personal project, I guess, but we've been obviously iterating over this notion of the decentralized marketplace for quite some time. When I came to Zora, I worked on quite a few auction houses. The first project being this Doge auction house. And then, soon after that, we sort of took this concept and iterated further on it by collaborating with Holly Herndon and Matt Dryhurst to create this auction house for a project, a fascinating project that they've been working on, creating a voice model of Holly's voice and opening that up for the public to build, to use to create audio tracks. And so it's a really interesting project. We started off auctioning the voice model itself, and then just some of the data around that. And then there was an open call to the community to create tracks, and eventually we built out this experience to showcase them and also to auction them off to raise funds for the DAO to further their research. So yeah, this was like super exciting because for me, because it represented this intersection of something that I've been passionate about for a long time, which is design, specifically in artwork that contextualizes music. I was, probably like many other people, attracted to graphic design at a really young age because I got into record collecting. And I thought that I really formed this opinion that it was fascinating how the album packaging could really add this extra layer to the music that it was presenting. And I feel like now that we've moved into certainly a more culture of hypermedia and everything's online, we have this really exciting opportunity to kind of think back on that materiality of out like music packaging and translate that over to interactive experiences, that provide context for artist releases, that labels, whatever you want to call it. And so I think that, like, again, what's fascinating about, especially like the music NFT ecosystem is that, more or less the media is available from any client. And so this gives a really cool opportunity to like really kind of push the idea of like, what is a music client? And what is, how do we contextualize digital audio? So I think, like this Holly Plus project really, I think leaned into that on multiple axes that were really fascinating. And of course, at the end of the day, you can listen to the music, and you can listen to it in all other different contexts as well. You can listen to it at Zora.co. You can listen to it, I don't know, from wherever, wherever it's being rendered. And so that sort of segues into this notion that, we have this amazing data registry. We have these possibilities for all of these interactions that can happen on chain. And we also have this layer of being able to, I guess I'll just use the word publish media to the blockchain as an immutable sort of content referencing system. And so, I think, that when the interactions happen, for instance, when these auctions are taking place and there's a lot of activity around them, like we saw in the Doge auction and other, sort of like high profile auctions, you really get this sense of, this buzzing network of, activity. And again, I might be stating the obvious to everybody here, but again, I think that really presents a unique way to think about how do we render this? How do we present this type of activity, and how do we present the media that's associated with it? So, another project that I did at Zora, and again, all of this work is like collaboration with our team. It's just amazing, all of the hard work that goes into every different aspect that every team member here at Zora contributes, and it's really exciting to be able to kind of play with all of this stuff at the very most user-facing level. So this project was a lot of fun. This was a big mint drop, like the sort of 10,000 PFP archetype. And again, like we just wanted to sort of really lean into giving the artwork context, and just creating like a real white label experience for this media. Because again, the media is decentralized. You can view it anywhere that there's a render. These large marketplaces like OpenSea, for example, Foundation, whatever, they serve a wonderful purpose as an aggregate and being able to sort of display large amounts of, or everything. But what's important is to kind of like separate like the actual artwork, the music, and just like, again, contextualize it and package it in a more unique sort of experience. And so, like while this mint was happening, it was exciting to sort of see a lot of the activity. We iterated further on this auction house concept with, Whipmap, just taking various high profile collections and creating auction houses around them, Bored Apes, of course, and little design ideas like referencing the Christie's logo, because, decentralized auctions are very different from auctions that happen in large sort of auction houses, if you will. And then we built another one for CryptoPunks. And this sort of led to some interesting things where, when the war broke out in Ukraine, we were contacted, and I broke off and worked on this sort of individually, but we helped build out, using some of the tools that we've built, open source tools, a fundraising auction and to raise funds to help out people trying to defend themselves in that country. So, this was yet again another fascinating sort of example of this global network activity coming together and interacting on a platform that is displaying and also allowing you to interact with something that's happening at that moment. Let's see. So that leads me to the next phase, which we've been iterating on sort of like larger marketplace concepts, and something that we've been developing in the last few months is a marketplace specific for nouns and nouns derivatives. And again, this is another example of taking this idea of a sort of limited aggregate of various contracts and highlighting them in a way that feels like more attuned to not only like the brand, but also the attitude of a particular, grouping of artwork or, concepts, etc. So what's fun about this is that, again, you can go to this marketplace, you can get a larger bird's eye view of all of the tokens. We can look at like auction history, which again is really fascinating for the primary auctions. And you can also, if you own a few, you can list them if you like, and you can buy them if they're being sold on chain with our V3 Ask module. And this is a work in progress, definitely. We will be folding a lot more features into it, but it's also been an exciting project for me in the sense that I've used it to iterate on a template, if you will, that I've been cooking up that attempts to generalize a lot of the functionality and componentry that we've been developing. And so this repo will be linked. It's, I'm building it as an example more so than a de facto white labeled template or starter kit, if you will. So I just really invite, and I'm going to be working on it while this hackathon is running and adding features that I think are interesting, building them in ways that seem to make sense. I project that for other developers might be handy, really focusing on making a lot of the functionality, like I'll just go over the code base, a lot of the sort of like the groupings of functionality. For instance, if I go here and go to a collection, something like filtering. We see this on a lot of marketplaces that, how do we make these filters available for developers to kind of slot into their projects without having to, build the whole thing themselves. And so a lot of what's going on in this repo is, just exploring that notion of, if you're going to include a filter sidebar or something like that into some view that you're building in your application, like how does that slot in, and how many sensible defaults can be included in building out that componentry, like how much user configuration do we want to offer? Do we want to keep this in the context of a template? Do we want this to be a NPM package that people can easily include into their projects, like a plugin, for example? And so a lot of these sort of open questions it's a work in progress, and a lot of these ideas are being sort of iterated on and worked through as exemplified in this repo. So yeah, I mean, I'll just spin around and kind of talk to what I've been building over the last couple of days. You know, one interesting development is the additions contracts that we've deployed and the super amazing app to create them. And I've been having fun creating some for myself and been making some music and putting some tracks out. And yeah, it's just, it's a really exciting and really interesting way to sort of interact with this concept. And clearly it is because a lot of individuals have been, and groups of people have been using it for many different purposes. But I think for myself, I was wondering how do we contextualize these additions in the context of like a sort of general purpose marketplace, or a marketplace that you could you know, build yourself. And you know, one interesting thing obviously is that every token is exactly the same. And so while, you know, if you go to like a collection, you know, all these are all 1-1s, but whether they're generative or hand carved, each NFT, if you go to a view like this, they're not all the same. Inversely, if you're looking at an addition, for example, you know, they are all the same. And so I've been playing around with this notion of like, how do I render the contract metadata? I've got this little debug button here. I'm pulling down like contract metadata and a lot of the props associated with the minting contract. How do I represent that in a way that's interesting, that sort of leans a little bit more into, you know, just building portable UI around this notion that yes, all of these tokens on this contract are identical. So maybe I don't want to just look at a grid of 4 or 500 or 5, you know, however many have been minted, unless I kind of want to know who's been minting them, and I want to see the ENS names, or et cetera, et cetera. If somebody's like, if the mint is out and somebody started listing a few on the secondary market, like with our ASK module. So yeah, I'm kind of like knee deep in this right now. I just took this hackathon as an opportunity to kind of jam a little bit, and specifically focusing on a music player. And so I think I'm going to incorporate some ideas from this embed product that we released a little while back that has a music player in it, and apply that. And then of course, add the mint button so you can go to this platform, whatever it is, and for whomever it is, and go ahead and mint one of the additions if the minting is still open. So yeah, so you know, my method of working is I make a new folder up here. I'm trying to keep everything a little segregated, so that perhaps it's a little bit easier to make that connection between what this is meant to do, how it slots into the application, and yeah, and again, like trying to make things portable. I feel like many developers, if you start building certain types of projects, just to jump back to this contextualizing music, for example, if I were to start making a bunch of projects for musicians again, or labels or whatever, I'd really just want to have a good place to start. So I can really spend a lot of my energy and time focusing on how do I differentiate this experience visually? How do I differentiate it with perhaps like a interesting approach to the user interface? How do I add new features that might be exciting to open source, like a music player? I don't know, you know, whatever, the sky's the limit. But we're building all of this on top of course, our protocol layer, and then also the API that we've constructed which is just fascinating. Yeah. So sorry, just checking to make sure I have not rambled on indefinitely. I started a little bit early, so kind of lost track of time here. Clearly, I enjoy talking about this stuff. So yeah, I mean, maybe I'll just continue to go through the I'll just continue to kind of like go through the repo, walk through it, and then A/B with what you're seeing on my blockseeker.xyz site. And sorry, excuse me. Yeah, so where to start? I created a fairly detailed README, I think. But if nothing is very clear, you tell me. One of the sort of interesting concepts behind this approach, and this was informed by the nouns marketplace, is that, you know, by default, if you go to like collections and then the address, for example, is a route, if you don't white label certain contracts, you know, this user interface that you're building really could just render any NFT collection or NFT out there that exists. And so I think that, like, while that is an extremely fascinating, I wouldn't say concept, a fascinating reality that one could build around, you know, you don't want that for everything, I guess, unless you're really curious. If you come up with some really funny design, I don't know what, and you just want to see like what do all these tokens look like, and I've tried that. I started collecting some pretty interesting NFTs on the free mints that this super cool site mint.fun exposed under the pseudonym crunkcollector.eth. And so, you know, there's a wallet that has just a bunch of goblins and things like that. And I plan to make something kind of fun to represent that at some point. It's super easy with the API that Isabella just demoed to do stuff like this. So yeah, it's just like one more layer that's kind of solved, and then you get to play around. But at any rate, back to this. So, you know, this is like, here's the landing page. Let's look at the pages. This is a Next.js app, which is the de facto framework for these types of projects. If you're working in some other framework, kudos to you. But a lot of this work just is sort of built in the context of Next.js. So yeah, let's just like, I'll go to my index page and have my landing composition here. And I go to compositions, landing. Here's my layout, and I am using my collection filter module filter provider. And I'm essentially hiding everything, so it just functions as a lazy loading grid or table of all of the contract NFTs that I've thrown at it. So, and then within that, I have my little landing NFTs grid, and I've created another component called NFT grid, and it's right here. And another pattern that I like to use is just taking advantage of the provider hook pattern that is so common in React. It really, like, I think especially when you're building a lot of apps and you want flexibility, you want to insert a custom renderer, for example. You know, if you use like a provider for all the NFT data, then of course you don't have to do prop drilling. You don't have to, you don't have to like drop a bunch of props and map them all out and then type them, et cetera, et cetera. It just makes things a little bit more flexible. So as you can see, if I jump back to this, right, there's like a lot of code in this repo, so and a lot of people have contributed to it. So have fun looking through it. But yeah, so if I go back here to my landing NFTs, I can see that I've actually created like a custom little render, and this was to render the component, the NFT data as I wanted to on the landing page here in this kind of row style. So yeah, so if I go there, you can see that I'm using my NFT provider data, and then I'm just going ahead and yeah, slapping all this stuff together and you know, adding some unique styles where possible. Now, another cool thing that's going on in this repo is that we've been working on a UI library, essentially. We've built it called Zord. It's cool. We've built it on top of vanilla extract, which is a really interesting JavaScript and CSS and JS library. What it does is it actually extracts and compiles static CSS, like a style sheet, essentially. So you've been around a while, you've probably used like SAS or Less or one of these CSS preprocessors. Vanilla extract works very much the same way, yet the interface is such that it allows you to essentially like write all of this styling as you would expect in JavaScript. And one of the really cool innovations that is exposed in this Zora Lab Zord package, which is now public. It is in beta. We have not created heaps of documentation for it yet. So really, here's an example of it in use, but there is not a formal README or anything like that. But I think if you're familiar with CSS, then you might be able to explore this relatively quickly. And also, it's important to read the vanilla extract documents because that takes a little bit of time to get your bearings with, especially if you want to start writing custom classes and things like that. But what's super cool about this is that all of your sort of very basic CSS, I guess, rules are typed in the components themselves. And so if you look here, stack, this is essentially a div that is a flex column. And I say gap, margin top, padding, X padding, etc. This will probably, like this sort of model and pattern might be familiar if you've used utility CSS libraries like Tailwind or Bootstrap or whatever. It just like the speed that you can compose with this is pretty amazing once you get the hang of it. It just feels so intuitive to just like start building out components. And then you can start to think about ways to sort of add your own spice on the top, if you will. And we have been conceptualizing and sort of strategizing around what a theming interface would look like. And I think that is something that we're excited to kind of know what users would like. To what extent do you want to be able to theme versus like, if you're comfortable writing CSS, you can just go in here you can just create like a global CSS file, make some CSS variables, super powerful. It's CSS at the end of the day. And you can create classes. You can slap those classes into your Zord vanilla extract elements. You can use this global style approach, which will make many people cringe if they see this little flag at the end of the style. But all I will say to that is that, again, if you're like me and I enjoy sort of designing and coding together, you know, it's kind of like by whatever means necessary until there's some alternatives that you can move with. And so, yeah, I don't know, you know, like here I'm just playing around with colors and or the way things are organized. I thought I would make a slide out menu instead of a popover menu like this, but the repo is set up in such a way that you can just, let me go to the menu. You can, you can pass a prop in, you can say pop over or pop out. So, you know, again, who knows? Maybe I want this to be a pop-up on mobile and a slide out on desktop or something. Yeah, just constantly trying to think about how to, when you're building something, use configuration as a mode of sort of exploring different layouts and composition, design ideas, etc. So yeah, oops, it's not running locally. These were some NFTs that I created for the last ETH Global hackathon. I've been minting my kids' art. I hope that's okay with him, but I think it's pretty cool. So yeah, I guess I'm kind of coming up on my formal time. I am wondering maybe if it is appropriate to open this up for questions. Having no audience feedback, I feel like I'm talking at a wall, but I know I'm not. And I see Jacob dialing in here. Okay, you're here. Was I even being recorded? Did
yeah,
people
of course.
see?
There's like
Okay.
200 people watching it. Don't worry. Well, we'll see if anybody has any questions. I did see your exclamation point important sins. Don't worry, I'm paying attention. So yeah, we'll just open it up, see if anybody has any questions over on the live chat. But since I know we just had a bunch of calls, it's possible, or a bunch of talks back to back, it's possible that people are more in the consume than necessarily the engage mode.
Their eyes are just kind of, it's just so much information. I mean, I will never be able to, Isabella's a powerhouse, and I know what she shared with everybody probably got people's brains just reeling. So yeah, but if anybody's around, if I can answer any questions, I'm happy to.
Awesome. Well, I'm not seeing too much come through on our end, so it might be that people are sort of happy with what was presented. But I think this was awesome. I mean, it was fun to kind of explore like what was possible. I think somebody asks, can we use these in our hack? And I think like the answer to that is like probably yes, because everything you used is sort of like just out there anyway, basically.
Yep, it is now. So yes, so, yeah. Absolutely. Go ahead.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. All right, great. Well, maybe we'll leave it there. Well, thank you so much, Dana. I really appreciate you rolling through that with us, and yeah, really awesome to kind of see the journey as well, and kind of what's possible.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. You too. Cheers.